Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for coming today. And as I mentioned in the introduction, to be able to come on a Monday evening is not easy. The weekdays are busy and it's the first day of the week. So I appreciate how many of you come. And I'd like to start with a warning. The warning is, if you expect today's class to be as sweet as yesterday's class, we'll be disappointed. Yesterday was Radhashtam, so it was a very devotional class. Today it will be more of a class which is, see, when we study scripture, this is the world we live in, this is the spiritual world. So we are here. So we want to understand the spiritual world, get a glimpse of the spiritual world, and relish that glimpse so that we feel inspired. So there are classes which are, say, centered on Leela of the Lord. But the Leela also happens in this world. But the Leela goes on eternally in the spiritual world. So these classes can be very sweet. And it's just we turn away from all the messiness of the world and we focus on remembering and relishing the pastimes of the Lord. Of course, we can learn some lessons from them, and those are applicable in this world. But in general, the world can be a tiresome place. And that's why often we just want to switch away from the world and focus on the Lord. Now, that is also one reason. So if we consider this to be the material world, and then there is the spiritual world. Now, below the material world, you can say, there is the fictional world. The fictional world means any kind of entertainment. It could be movies, TV series, comics, video games. So many times people turn off and go into this world. So in one sense, turning out of this world, tuning out of the world, provides a lot of relief. Now of course that relief can take us into further illusion also. So there is a difference between turning out from this world and going toward Krishna, and turning out of this world and going into some other creation of Maya. But the principle is similar in the sense that the world can be a tiring place. So when there is Bhagavad-gita that happens, the stories of the Lord, the Leela of the Lord, especially if somebody can tell it in a very entertaining and dramatic way, even today it attracts hundreds and thousands of people. And that's wonderful. So that people are choosing to, even we all have a need for entertainment. And we're choosing that entertainment in Krishna. Recently there was this Narsimha movie that came up. And it's wonderful that this kind of entertainment is being made at a mainstream level. So we all need, so this can also be entertainment. Now for some people it can be spiritual entertainment, for others it can be pious entertainment. However, if that is all that we are hearing, the problem with that is we cannot go like this to the spiritual world. We have to live in this world and then go to the spiritual world. Because we cannot just turn off from the world and just live in the remembrance of Krishna. Yes, we want to remember Krishna all the life, but we have to live in this world, face this world, and go through this world to Krishna. So, today's class will be focused on this journey through the world. Our goal is Krishna, but the world is a messy place. It can be a miserable place. It can sometimes be a maniac place. But it is basically a messy place. So this journey is difficult. And even if we are going to Krishna, we still have to go through this world. So while we are going through this world, how can we, whatever challenges we are facing, how can we minimize those challenges? So this talk that I have prepared, I would say this three-part series is a topic which is very dear to me, because I have seen so many devotees across the world going through unnecessary problems, individually and collectively, because of misunderstanding what goes through in their life. The topic is emotionally healthy spirituality. Now, spirituality is our relationship with Krishna, ultimately, our bhakti. Now, let's try to understand the topic first. It's like if I say physically healthy spirituality, what could it mean? It could mean that when we are practicing bhakti, we should also be doing it in a way that is physically healthy for us. That if somebody has diabetes and somebody brings a Tirupati Balaji laddu for them, and they say, this is Mahaprasad, how can I refuse this? This is Prasad. It is true. But still, it may cause an insulin spike, isn't it? So physically healthy spirituality means that when we are practicing spirituality, it is not that spirituality will automatically take care of our physical health. Yes, it can in many ways. If somebody is eating meat, somebody is smoking and drinking, the practice of spirituality itself will lead to the adoption of healthier habits, and that can improve one's health. But at that same time, so if we consider spirituality, let's consider spirituality and physical health. So ideally speaking, what should happen is our spirituality improves our physical health. So spirituality could mean that we adopt healthier habits. We may be eating anything and everything, and then we start eating food that is offered to Krishna. Most of the time that would mean we cook food at our home and then we eat it. So all those things would help in improving our health. So physical health can improve. At the same time, we could say that these two are unconnected. Say if somebody gets a physical fracture, can we say that chant Hare Krishna and your fracture will get cured? No. In some ways, our physical health and our spirituality are unconnected. We have to do what is required for our physical health, and we have to do what is required for our spirituality. Now the third possibility is, this is a dark possibility, that a misunderstanding or misapplication of our spirituality can worsen our physical health. Say somebody is going for book distribution, say in the month of December, and they have back pain, and they carry a huge bag, and distributing these books for Krishna, Krishna will take care of my health. Well, yes, but Krishna takes care of your health by reminding you, giving you the intelligence to remember that you have back pain. Maybe you have to make some other arrangement. Let somebody else carry the books, have some arrangement by you carry the books. So if we are reckless, say if it's very cold and somebody says, I want to go for Mangalarti, and they come out in the morning, but they don't wear warm clothes. Why? I'm going for Krishna's sake. Krishna will protect me. That's not going to work. If we misunderstand or misapply, sometimes our spirituality can contribute to harming our physical health also. Ideally speaking, it should not happen, but the possibility is there. So I hope these three dynamic of how spirituality and physical health, it can be improved, they are disconnected, and it can also worsen. All three are possible. So what we want to do is, the same dynamic can apply to our emotional health also. That our spirituality can improve our emotional health. The two can be unconnected, or our spirituality can worsen our emotional health. So what we want to make sure is that our spirituality never worsens our emotional health. Now, what emotional health is, I will explain shortly. But let's look at the overall topic and understand the topic first. What we want to do is, our spirituality should never worsen our emotional health. And if the two are unconnected, then in this case, pay attention to both. If whatever is required for emotional care, and if it improves, then do it. Do it more. So we will try to see how our spirituality relates to our emotional health in a way that we are also emotionally healthy and strong. And so before I go into the topic, let's look at what we are going to discuss in the 3 sessions with respect to emotional health. When I talk about emotional health, it can be our own at a personal, internal level. Sometimes we may feel very bitter, we may feel very negative, we may feel very hurt by something. So emotional health, I want to talk at 3 levels in the 3 sessions. The first is with respect to the self. The second is with respect to association. That means our own misunderstanding of the relationship with spirituality and emotional health can lead us to doing things which may hurt us more. So with respect to our own conception, that's the self. Second is in association. Sometimes we may be well-intentioned, but we may act in ways that hurt others, and not just hurt others, but harm others emotionally. So in terms of association. And third is in our relationship with divinity, in our relationship with Krishna. So this is not the most pleasant acronym, but the topic is not very pleasant. This is how we become sad. Unnecessarily we become sad. So yes, this life is troubling, and there are times when we all will be troubled. It's like, sometimes the weather may be very cold, sometimes we might get a physical injury. Life is troubling, but that doesn't mean we have to aggravate the trouble. Okay. So let's look at the self, how our own misconceptions may lead us to suffer more than necessary at the mental level. So, when I discuss this topic, I will discuss it using different frameworks. But let's take a framework called Chit. Chit is consciousness, or be conscious. So I'll try to look at the first will be the concept. We'll try to understand the concept. In the concept, we also try to understand the misconception that might be there. Then the implication of the concept. If we understand the concept properly, what does it mean? And then there is a takeaway. What can we do to apply in our lives to make things better? So, I'll start with some experiences which have led me to recognize the importance of this topic, as well as to talk with different devotees across the world who have also been working on these topics. I remember when I was introduced in 1996 to Krishna consciousness, and 1998 I joined as a brahmachari in the Pune temple after I completed my engineering and working for a short while. And then around 2007, I was in Pune. And I was in a very, very conservative, rigid brahmachari ashram. And I was because of that, got very good training in philosophy and sadhana and other things. But I was quite disconnected from the world. So, I remember that at one time, 2 distinct incidents that, because we were, after 5-7 years, I was also one of the senior devotees and senior person in the ashram. So one night suddenly we were woken up and he said that, there has been one of our congregation devotee leaders, his wife had passed away at night because of a heart attack. So then we had to go there to do some kirtans. So we woke up and then we went there. And this Prabhu, he was there, and they all had the samskar and performed everything. But this Prabhu was completely unmoved. he was just like with a stoic face sitting there, and we had one small child. And after we came back, we did kirtans, we offered our prayers, and then when we came back, there was a general talk in the Brahmacharya ashram. There was one senior devotee was there, and he was telling, "You see, his wife passed away, but there was not a single tear in his eyes." That shows spiritual advancement. That shows how detached he is. Krishna says, "Dhiras tatra na muhyati," that one is not affected by this at all. I felt there's something off about this, but I was not really sure about it. Yeah, there's a quote. Once you grow old enough in spirituality, for everything you can find a shloka. So, whether that shloka applies in that context or not, that is something that we carefully see. And then, a couple of months later, some similar situation came. This is not night, it was in the afternoon. We got this news that there was this Mataji, her husband, had started becoming a devotee, and then suddenly he had passed away because of heart attack. This is not very common, but somehow this happened. And then we went there, we did kirtan, we offered prayers, and this Mataji was crying so much. And after that, we came back, that same devotee was telling me, "See, this is how women are also sometimes." That is why they just can't understand philosophy, because that's why they get very attached. Now, I think this was something really off. It's what happens for everyone. We view philosophy according to what our primary understanding in bhakti is. But I felt something was wrong. At that time I was reading the Mahabharata. And then I came towards the section where Abhimanyu passes away. And Arjuna is devastated. There are pages upon pages describing Arjuna's breakdown. And then I showed that to this devotee. He was like one of my Shiksha gurus. He says, "See, Arjuna is crying so much." He says, "That is why we don't study the Mahabharata, we study the Bhagavad-gita." The Mahabharata is the mundane book, the Bhagavatam is transcendental book. I felt, now, I just cannot talk with this devotee anymore. So at that time, the internet was not just coming up, but it was near the ashram, internet access was very regulated. But then I started traveling to various places in India, and I started traveling abroad. I started interacting with devotees abroad. And slowly, I started understanding that the understanding I had got was not wrong, but it was very one-sided. So, what I will be talking now is based on the discussions I have had with many different devotees. And broadly, see, our philosophy is that there are 3 levels of reality. There is the body, there is the mind, and there is the soul. And all 3 together comprise the self. So, the body, the mind, and the soul. Now, all 3 are real. This is the body is real. Now, when we say the body is Maya, but it is Maya in the sense that it is temporary, not in the sense that it is false. It is temporary. So now, from the body, we experience various sensations. So, if I slip and fall, and I get a sprain, then I experience some pain. Now, is that pain real? Well, it depends on how you define real. Pain is real in the sense that the pain is indicator that there is some injury in the body. There's something dysfunctional. And that dysfunctionality has to be taken care of. If there's a sprain and I try to walk with a sprained leg, I may try to deny the pain, I may toughen myself up and bear the pain. But if I force myself to walk with a sprained leg, it's only going to become worse. So, now if we consider the level of the body, is the pain Maya? Well, no. The pain is an indicator. The pain is giving information. It's an indicator of injury. There's something wrong over there. Now, of course, there is a possibility that somebody might be a hypochondriac. Has any of you heard this word hypochondriac?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Not sick, but feeling sick all the time.
Yes, a person who pretends to be sick, to gain some attention, some affection. That oh, I'm so sick and I have to go to this. Oh, people come and offer me food, people offer me comforting words. So, is the pain Maya? Well, maybe. Somebody might have a little pain, but they may act as if, oh, it's like my whole body is broken completely. So, you could say there is an objective side to the pain and a subjective side also to the pain. So, at an objective level, the pain is a mechanism in the body to indicate that there is something wrong, some injury is there. Now, at a subjective level, a person might exaggerate it. That's why it's possible that it can be an exaggeration. Like, if somebody has a little bleeding and then you apply some disinfectant, the person screams, don't be such a baby. We may say that, I just fear it now. Like some people just have almost like an irrational fear of needles. Come on, don't be a baby, you might say. What does it mean? Okay, it's a pain, but it's a bearable pain. Don't make a big issue out of it. So it's possible that a small pain can be made into huge. But the pain itself is a real experience. And that real experience serves a real purpose. The purpose is to indicate to us that something is wrong. And that needs to be fixed. Now, in many ways, it is helpful to consider the mind to be like the body. Because the mind is also a level of reality. Just like the body is a level of reality, the mind is also a level of reality. My favorite metaphor for this is a computer system. The body is like the hardware, the mind is like the software, and the soul is like the user. Now, in a computer system, the hardware can get damaged. And the hardware is damaged, we need to replace the hardware. We need to fix the hardware, whatever way it is. Now, like that, even the software can get damaged. The software can get corrupted, viruses can come up. So similarly, the mind can also get damaged. So now when the mind gets, let's not use the word damage, let's start with the mind can also have problems. We'll look at the nature of the problems. So when the mind has problems, generally we talk about that, okay, the mind can trick us, the mind can deceive us, we need to control the mind. And yes, that is true. It's a very important thing. So here, let's try to generally understand how we function. The way we function is that from the mind, consciousness, Chaitanya comes out. So Chaitanya is the energy of the Atma. And if I put it in a particular way over here, can you see the flashlight over here? So now is the flashlight there now?
Yes.
The flashlight is there, but you cannot see it. So basically what happens is, our mind is like a pipe. Can you see the light now? Yeah, so if this light is like this, the pipe is like this, you will see it much lesser. So the mind is like a pipe, it's like a passageway. It's more than a passageway, but let's begin with that understanding. It's like a passageway through which consciousness from the soul comes out and goes to the body. And through the body out. And then information is taken in and it comes back. So the mind is the link between the soul and the body. Now the mind performs many functions, but I'll talk about mainly 4 functions over here. The mind is like a route. Route means it's a link, it's a pathway. It's the route for consciousness. It's a link from the physical world to the spiritual soul. The mind is a route. But it is not just a route. It is also like a screen. Screen means what? That the inputs from the various senses are integrated and presented on the screen of the mind. Shrotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam ghranam eva cha adhisthaya manaschayam vishayan upasevate. So the inputs from the various senses come in. We consider this to be the mind. Then we have the 5 Jnanendriyas. Which are the Jnanendriyas? Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin. Yes. They're the 5 knowledge acquiring senses. So there, the input that comes in is integrated and presented on the screen of the brain. So the mind is not just a screen. When I'm using the word screen, it is like an integrator. But along with that, the integrator of the various sensory inputs. But the mind is also like a memory device. By memory device, what it means is that in the mind, it's not just a window where inputs are coming in. In the mind, there are memories just stored. These are called as impressions. Impressions means these are samskaras. The Sanskrit word is samskar. Now, the word samskar can also be written in English as samskar. So, everybody has some scar in their psyche. So, if somebody has seen a bomb explosion, or somebody has been bitten by a dog, let's take a small, less threatening example. If somebody has been bitten by a dog, then whenever they see a dog, that dog might be a sweet little cuddly poodle. But they see the dog, it is just, that dog gets reduced to its teeth. This dog bite me. So what happens is, there are, in the mind, impressions are stored. Samskaras are there. And the samskaras can be positive also. Generally when we use, like we have namakaran samskar or we have vivaha samskar. At that time the idea is, we want to create healthy impressions. Once a year, I often take a group of American yoga students on a tour of India. Spiritual India, we go to Vrindavan, Rishikesh, Jaipur and a few other places like that. And most of the yoga students are females. So when they had come once to India, they had heard about the big Indian wedding. So when they come, they are not coming only for the spirituality, they are coming to experience India. So they said that we also want to attend a wedding. So when in Mumbai, there was a congregation devotee whose daughter was getting married. So they went for the wedding. And at the end of our tour, we asked them, what was the most memorable experience? So 3 of those girls said this wedding was very memorable. I said, okay, what do you like about the wedding? He said, like 800 people for the wedding. In the Western world, big wedding is like you have 200, 300 people. 800 is... I said, there are 800 people for the wedding. And just went on for hours and hours and hours. So this wedding go for 2-3 days also. So then another girl said, that after attending a wedding like that, you can never forget you are married. Now when I say, you get married, how do you forget that you are married? But the idea is, if you just go to a court and sign some documents, then it doesn't create much of an impression on the mind. So, I'm not saying weddings have to be gorgeous and like they have to be pompous or gorgeous or spending a lot of money. But my point is that all the ambience that is created, there's a gravitas to the ambience. So there are so many people are there. There's a sacred fire. All that creates impression. So the samskaras are impressions that are created in the mind. And we will talk about samskaras even more. But right now let's understand the concept of the mind. So the mind is a route. The mind is a screen. Screen means it's integrating input. It's a memory device. That means this is where our impressions or samskaras are stored. And then lastly, the mind is also a mirror. Mirror is cheto darpana marjanam. That it is, see, we all have a self-conception. So my self-conception may be that I am an intellectual person. Now that's one part of me. I have an engineering degree, but that's not a very big part of my self-conception. Okay, it's like I feel as if I was an engineer in a previous lifetime. It feels so long, over 30 years ago, it's almost like a different lifetime. But so we all have many roles. We have our gender, we have our nationality, we have our age, we have our income group, we have our profession, we have our relationship status. There are so many roles or aspects to who we are. But some of them are much more prominent in our mind than others. So which one is more prominent? That is what the mind as a mirror is reflecting for us. So the idea is that certain roles need to be more important than other roles. That is the meaning of being responsible. In California, there is a rule made that in the Western world there is a lot of importance given to physical safety. That's why if you have small children, there is a car seat behind. In India, I see there once I was driving a car and I saw a mother with like three children, one on each lap, and in the car, one child was sitting on her head. And all of them on the front seat. So the car ride was like a joy ride for adventure ride for the kids. So now in America, there's a lot of, in the Western world, there's a lot of emphasis on safety. So the baby sits behind. And especially the baby is very small, the back car seat also turned around. So the baby sits behind. So now it happened 2-3 times in California that the mother or the father or both, generally that was the mother was driving, she's got out of the car and went away and forgot the baby behind. And then the baby almost got suffocated and somebody else noticed and came back and saved the baby. Then they made a rule that in all cars, we should have an alarm system. That if we have a sensor by which, if there's somebody sitting on the car, baby seat, and there's nobody in the front seat and the car doors are locked, it's like there are some cars which have, if somebody opens the door, immediately start beeping. Right? They should start beeping. So there was an American senator who said that people who forget their children should forget the idea of having children. Now, of course, it is too late in that, they already have children. But my point is, certain roles need to be very important. If you are a parent, you cannot forget that you are a parent. So so the point is that the mind is a mirror. And when it's a mirror, certain images come more prominently than others. Nowadays, some people are very body image conscious. And sometimes, especially among young people, young girls, they have eating disorders because they're so conscious about their figure. So that is a self-image. So each of us has a self-image, and that comes from the mind as a mirror. So basically my point is that the mind is a very important thing. The mind plays a lot of roles. And just as the body is necessary for functioning, the mind is also necessary for functioning. In the machine that we have for functioning in the world, just like in a computer, the software is very important. Similarly, the mind is very important. So now, with this understanding, today's class will be a bit more conceptual than tomorrow's class because I have to set the ground. With this understanding of the various roles of the mind, now let's look at what emotional health means. So, when we start with emotional health, what is the idea? Let's first begin with, there are two things, there are desires and there are emotions. Okay, how many of you think desires and emotions, there is no difference between the two? Anyone? Okay, how many of you think there is a difference? Okay, so the rest think the difference does not make any difference. Okay. So those of you think there's a difference between desires and emotions. What do you think is the difference? Yes.
Desire is what we want.
So desire is what we want. Okay.
Yeah. Emotion is what we
in the
feel.
mind, and emotions are generated in the heart.
Okay, then that raises the question: what is the heart? I understand what you're saying.
Seat of emotion. I mean, the way Krishna uses the term hridaya in Bhagavad-gita. He's not talking about the biological heart, he's talking about the seat of emotion. You know, Ishwarasam Bhutanam Hridadeshe Arjun Tishtati. He's talking about the heart being the seat of emotion.
So where is the heart then?
Where is the heart?
Yeah, in the soul, mind, body, where is the heart?
In the body.
In the body, but it's not the biological heart.
The seat of, I mean, there are two things. One is heart, the biological heart, but then heart is also a seat of emotion, which is what Krishna refers to.
Yes, correct. It's the seat of emotions. Yes, we'll come back to the point of the heart. It's true, but from a functional perspective, is there a difference between? We are talking about from the where they originate. So that's true. From a functional perspective, is there any difference? Yes.
So emotions are a sense of perception that more or less in the category of feeling or perception. The desires are originated from possibly emotions or what we have already studied. So we are originating the desires from what information we have got, but emotions are what you perceive.
That's a good difference. Let's note this down. So desires come from the mind, that's one thing. Emotions from the heart. Let's look at this. And emotions are more associated with perceptions. And good point here. Emotions, so they are more like outside in, we could say. And desires are more inside out. Okay? So these are what we generate. They come from inside. Okay, it's a good point. Anything else? Okay, lots of comments, yeah.
Well, in one sense, desire can be seen as the impetus for all other cognitive functions to take place. But in another sense, desire is also an emotion. It's like, I desire this. It's like to feel desire is sometimes considered to be an emotion. It's just like an English thing more than a philosophical thing. But, yeah.
So you're saying that it's more semantic than conceptual.
One meaning.
One way of looking at it.
Yes.
So desire is the impetus for other things. What other thing we can look at it? That is true. Other cognitive functions, practical actions. Yes, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, true.
I think desire and emotions, they are both interrelated, and one sometimes becomes a cause and other becomes an effect, and vice versa.
Yes, they are definitely related in the sense that desires can trigger emotions and emotions can also trigger desires. So definitely they are interconnected. So we'll discuss about interconnection. So they're not like black and white, completely distinct. But for our purpose, let's try to look at the difference before we look at the interaction. Yes, Mama?
My assumption is all emotions can be desires, but not all desires can be emotions.
All emotions can be desires, but all desires can't be emotions. Sorry, this requires a purport. Okay, but let's explore this. Okay, it's more of focusing on the interaction between emotions and desires. Wow. Yes, bro. Can you go behind? Two more answers that we're looking for.
I think all the emotions are product of the desires.
So, okay, emotions are Okay, emotions are products of desire, this way. So basically you're saying this. From desires come emotions. Yes, bro. Thank you.
Krishna Prabhu, emotions are mostly based on feelings, they are experience, and I think desires are just a random.
Think that so many of you have a desire to answer the question. I don't know what is my emotion about that now. Okay. So sorry, what did you say once again? Desires are random. Emotions are associated with experiences.
Yes, mostly they are experience and feelings.
Okay, they are associated. Now I don't want to get to what is the difference between feelings and emotions. I don't know. It's very related. But desires can be a bit random. Yes, Mata, you can finish with this.
Desire will be the cause, and emotion is like an effect. And positive desires, the positive fulfillment of desire will lead to positive emotions, and unfulfilled desires leads to anger and negative emotions.
Okay.
Emotions can be, it can be displayed and people can see it, but desire, what is in your mind, nobody can see it. Emotions can be perceived by others. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's a good point. Desires are often invisible, whereas emotions are often visible. It of course depends. Some people, they say they wear their heart on their sleeve. That is, all their emotions are very visible. Some people have what they call like a poker face. They're very stoic. They don't show any emotions. It's possible to keep the emotions also invisible. Okay. So Mike will finish with this. Thank you.
As a converse point, when we talk about AI or artificial intelligence and we ask why is that acting, how do you know if something's like Blade Runner, that they have this like questionnaire to figure out if this is an AI or not, right? One difference between an AI and a human being is that the heuristic for action is desire, whereas the heuristic for action in an AI is actually just the algorithm. It's not that the AI desires to do action. The human being desires to do action. So, and then like there's this idea that can an android experience depression? So you could say like depression's the emotion, and for a human being that depression's tied with like why they act, which is desire. But for an AI, they have neither of those things.
Yes. AI don't have either of those. Thank you. That is true. So all these answers are quite thought-provoking, and I don't want to be provoked. So I will use a simple framework. It's not an absolute framework, but it is useful for us to understand at this particular point. And then in the question answers, if you have time, we'll look a little bit more at the nuances. See, basically I said that the soul interacts with the body, and then beyond that the outer world through the mind. So broadly speaking, there is input through the mind, through the body to the mind, and there is output to the world. So the input is associated with the jnana indriyas, like we discussed. And the output is associated with the karma indriyas. That means when we see something, if I see a snake, then there's the input coming in, and then we decide, should I run away? Can I find a stick? Do I have to kill the snake? Is there someone who can catch the snake and throw it away? We have to take some action. So there is generally, let's take this as one framework right now and we'll explore it further. That the emotions are associated with the jnanendriyas. When we take some information from outside, as a result of that, we experience some emotions. So, if we see a small child getting beaten up, and then there's a bully who's beating up a child, then we may feel anger, we may feel alarm, we may feel outrage. What's going on over here? How dare somebody do something like this? So, generally, emotions are experienced in response to some outer perceptions. Now, of course, there is something internal also. The same perception may lead to a small emotion in someone and a large emotion in someone. So there is the inner samskaras also play a factor. But generally, emotions are more outside in, as you mentioned. They are associated with the jnanendriyas. When something happens in the outer world, and that leads to emotions. Now, desires are generally associated with the karmendriyas. That I desire to do something, and that desire impels me. So, I desire to watch this movie. Then what do? Okay, then I go to theater, or I turn on a particular channel, subscribe to a particular OTT platform, turn on my TV. When there's a desire generally impels us to action. So in that sense, desire is more associated with the karmendriyas. Now, of course, these two are related. So when we pursue something, when we pursue something, we experience some emotion. So if we consider that sequence, dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha. So sanga is attachment. Like I see something, I think about it. I dwell on it, I imagine about it. And hey, that's nice. That's nice. Sanga, that is emotion. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. I want it. That is desire. And if somebody says, I want it. Say a child is going through a supermarket, child says, I want it. Mommy, I want it. Daddy, I want it. So you see it, that's nice, is emotion. I want it is desire. And say mother says, Beta, you already have so many toys. No need for one more. Then when that happens, Sanga sanjayate kama, kama krodho vijayate. So when we have a desire, and there is something that we notice is obstructing the desire. That is the information that is coming in. Then anger comes up. And then the child will throw a tantrum. So these are related. But broadly, emotions are more outside in, desires are more inside out. Now, why is this important to understand for us from a functional perspective? That, see, emotions are in some ways like sensations. By sensations, we talk about pain. So, if I lift up a heavy weight and I feel pain in my back, then that's information that this is heavy weight. Should I continue lifting it? Is it manageable? It's not manageable. That information itself is not a bad thing. Now that information, how to manage it is up to me. So just as physical sensations are information, emotions can also be information. And that information itself should not always be neglected. Sometimes we lift a suitcase, and then if somebody has a small suitcase, we lift it up. Wow, it's so heavy. That's what have we got inside? We've got stones over here. So it's like, but okay, it's heavy, but it's manageable. So after acknowledging the weight, we may still decide I can lift it. Or sometimes after acknowledging the weight, we decide, okay, we need one more person, together we lift it. That's what we do with the information is up to us. But the information itself cannot be denied. So similarly, with respect to the mind, when some emotions come up, those emotions themselves are information that something is off over here. Then what do we do about those emotions? That comes later. So now, let's move from emotions now to desires. So if we consider the sequence in the Bhagavad-gita, sense or discipline is talked about at 3 different levels. Discipline, say, let's consider discipline in terms of we are passing by a particular road and we see some food item over there. Now, or suppose let's consider somebody is alcoholic who is trying to recover from alcoholism. And when they are trying to recover from alcoholism, their house is here, their office is here. And on the way there's a big bar. So now if they're serious about recovering from alcoholism, when they pass by that road, they don't even look at the bar. So basically the first level of self-control is no perception and no emotion. Yada samharate chayam kurmo angani vasarvasha. Like a tortoise, it just does not take in, the tortoise withdraws its limbs into its body so that there is no risk of interaction with the outer world. No predator can attack and crush its limbs. Just withdraw your limbs inside. So the one level of self-control is no perception and no emotion. Now, after that, now, but it's not always possible. Like if we are going along a road and there is some obscene hoarding somewhere, we might say, I don't look at it. So no perception. But if we're walking on the road and there are people dressed in scanty clothes, say, for example, now we cannot close our eyes there. If we close our eyes while driving a car, we permanently close our eyes, isn't it? So we can't do that over there. So no perception completely is not an option all the time. Now the second possibility is that there is perception but no emotion. So how is this possible? That this happens with time. This happens with detachment. Say some of us may have been eating meat before, previously in our lives. And maybe we were attracted to particular non-vegetarian food. Now if we travel in a plane or a train and the person sitting next to us orders some non-vegetarian food. Now when we see that food, we may see it, but we don't feel any desire for it. Okay, we just turn away. Now, most devotees have this experience, they don't feel any craving for the non-vegetarian food. So we don't know whether Krishna is all attractive, but Krishna Prasad is all attractive. So there can be there's perception but no emotion. This is more like detachment. Detachment means that one doesn't experience any emotion at all. And the third is there is perception, there is emotion, but there is no intention. So there is perception, there is emotion, but there is no intention that comes. This Krishna talks about this in 2.70, where he says, Apuryamanamachala pratishtam samudramapah pravishanti advad tadvad kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti akamakami. He says, kama kami. Input will come in, but there is no agitation that there has to be an output. That this is the idea of basic discipline. Any culture, society, that there are so many things we find attractive, but we learn to regulate ours. See, modern society may be very liberal and sexually it may be very promiscuous and all those things. But still, even in such a society, if one person starts staring at the other person, that's considered impolite. So the idea is we should have that much self-control. That even if there's attraction, we don't act it. So the idea is, this is one level of discipline. Now, so perception but no emotion. This is Padmapatram Ivambasa, 5.10 Krishna talks about this. That the water comes, but the water has no effect on a lotus leaf. The lotus leaf remains in such a way that water just slips off. So perception comes in, but perception has no effect at all. Perception leads to emotion, but emotion doesn't lead to intention. Intention is like after desiring comes, we have action, intention, we act on it. So, okay. Again, this might be a bit technical, and we'll continue this topic tomorrow, but I'll just make 2 short points, and then we'll open for question answers. See, in this case, why are we talking about the difference between emotions and desires in the context of emotional health? The point is that with respect to desires, majority of the time mind management, if we talk about mind management, with respect to desires, we need to control. We will have many different kinds of desires that will come. And it's not just a matter of spiritual life that we need to control our desires. Even if somebody has no spirituality in their life, still they have to control their desires. If somebody is just a materialist, okay, I want to buy this car also and that buy that car also, but you have enough money to buy only one car. So you have to control your desires. So with respect to desires, control is required. Now with respect to emotions, is control required? Yes, sometimes it is required. You could say with respect to desires, it's almost like 99% of the time, or 99%, let's put it, we'll talk a little bit about 90% of the time we need to control our desires. Sometimes we can channel and fulfill our desires also, but majority of the time we need to control our desires. Now with respect to emotions also, we need to control our emotions sometimes. Like if somebody provokes us and we get angry, then the temptation might be, I want to speak swear words, I want to punch you in the face. We need to control. But what is happening? The emotions are leading us to certain desires and actions. But try to control the emotions itself. However, there are times when the emotions don't need to be controlled. And when the emotions are going wild, sometimes we need to be comforted. We need to be comforted. Why? Why comforted here? This is an important point. I think everything that I was speaking is building up to this particular point now. See, the mind is a tool that takes in information. And just as there can be an injury to the body, there can be a wound to the mind. There can be a wound to the mind. So for example, if we love someone very much, say if somebody's spouse passes away, somebody's child passes away, the child is in great danger. So that is a wound to the mind. When the mind is wounded, at that time, the mind needs to be comforted, not controlled. Just like if we are trying to lift a heavy weight. And yes, sometimes the body is feeling pain, but yeah, I want to do this exercise, I lift up the weight. But if somebody has got a slip disc, and then they try to lift a weight. Well, if somebody with a slip disc trying to lift a brain, did you slip a disc or did you slip a brain? He says, why are you trying to lift a weight down? He said, you should not be doing this right now. So just as the body can be wounded, the mind can also be wounded. So the mind is frequently trouble for us. Trouble means it is desiring this, it is craving for this, it is craving for that. But sometimes the mind is not trouble, it is in trouble. The mind is in trouble. That means the mind is wounded. Say somebody whom we trust very much, and that person betrays us. That person backstabs us. Now at that time, think, how could you do like this to me? Now this is like a wound to our mind. And at that time, a person needs to be comforted. So to say that can just control it and show no emotion. Yes, sometimes we need to conceal our emotions because our role may require that, our service may require that. But if the mind is wounded, it needs some comforting. So there is lamenting, which is often reproach. Krishna says, do not lament. Ashochan, Ashocastam, for example. But lamenting is very different from grieving. So, what is the difference between lamenting and grieving? Grieving is basically like providing the mind a place for healing. Grieving is healing for the mind. What does it mean? That is, say my hand is fractured. If my hand is fractured, then I have to do two things. First, I have to put my hand in sling. Or if the fracture is too much, I may have to put a cast also in. So the idea is, don't move your hand. And then after that, after 15 days, after 3 weeks, whatever, then slowly start moving the hand. Slowly start moving the hand. So there's a proper process for recovery. So just as there's a proper process for recovery when there's physical injury, there is a process for recovery when there is mental wound. So in grieving, what happens is, there are two steps. There is withdrawal from our normal life. So for example, now in the past, withdrawal was done in a particular way. That you do certain rituals, go to a holy place, smear the ashes on a sacred water. Like that, there are various rituals that are done. But those rituals involve withdrawing from the normal life. And then we are reminded of higher realities. We are reminded about the soul, that the soul also goes on a particular journey. Now, in the past, when people were steeped in a particular worldview, these rituals themselves carried very deep meaning. And those rituals helped in healing. Now, today, we may not be that much steeped in that worldview. So sometimes, along with those rituals, we may do some other things which help bring about the healing. What could be those things? Sometimes we may have memorial service where we talk about that person, we appreciate that person, we remember that person. So, what is required for healing for each person may be. There is withdrawal and then there is gradual re-engagement in the world. Just like when I put my hand in a sling, first there is no motion. And after that, there is gradual motion. So now, I have a whole 3-part course on growing through grief. I had conducted this at the time of COVID. It is there online. But I won't go into grieving as a topic. But what I'm talking about is that when somebody has lost someone and they are broken down, they are in tears, saying that their tears are a sign of attachment. And you don't cry, that indicates you are detached. That's a super oversimplified understanding. It can be a very distorted understanding. That yes, that relationship is maybe temporary. It may be not necessarily at the level of the soul, but that is a role we are playing in this world. It's an important role. And emotions will be invested in that. To dismiss them simply as mundane is a misunderstanding of how the world works. So when at a practical level, if one devotee speaks very hurtfully to another devotee, and that devotee is feeling very pained and shocked and wounded, then other devotees should comfort that person. Don't take it so seriously. Just tomorrow we'll talk about tolerance. No, many times so whenever anybody feels hurt, whenever anybody feels even traumatized by some emotional upheaval, often the standard thing is tolerated. But when is tolerance emotionally healthy and when is tolerance emotionally toxic? That we will discuss in tomorrow's session. But the point is, when Krishna tells Arjuna, when Arjuna is breaking down, Krishna does not tell Arjuna that, just 13 days ago I told you the Bhagavad-gita. Did you already forget the Gita? What kind of dumb fool are you? Maybe I should have found a more worthy candidate to speak the Bhagavad-gita. No, Krishna does not do that at all. Krishna actually comforts Arjuna over there. Krishna takes a pragmatic approach. No, Krishna understands what are the emotions that Arjuna is going through. So when Arjuna comes back, when he returns on the 13th day, normally when the warriors are coming back, there is celebration, there is a welcoming music to welcome the warriors back and to lift their spirits. On this day, there is a complete somber silence. And nobody is going to meet the eyes of Arjuna as he is coming in. Normally, soldiers will salute him, greet him, nod their head. So nobody is doing that. Arjuna feels a weird sensation in his heart. And then as he comes in, there's a tent where everybody would meet at the end of the day. Arjuna comes in, His eyes go straight to where Yudhishthira is. He sees Yudhishthira sitting, he feels relief, and he moves around quickly, and he sees Abhimanyu's throne is empty. Arjuna's heart almost stops. He looks back at Yudhishthira, not wanting to believe the evidence of his eyes. And then he notices that there are tears trickling down Yudhishthira's eyes. Arjuna collapses on the ground. And he cries out, Abhimanyu, Abhimanyu, Abhimanyu. Yudhishthira gets up from the throne and walks with leaden foots, a heavy heart and a heavy voice. Yudhishthira explains to Arjuna what has happened. Arjuna goes through a variety of emotions. First emotion is shock. Then after that, there's guilt. He starts thinking that this is my son. I should have been there to protect my son. Because I went out seeking glory for myself and I was not there for my son. He says, in this final moments, Abhimanyu must have called out for me, fire on me that I was not there. And then that guilt changes to rage. And rage is often indiscriminate. It first goes towards the other Pandavas. And he yells at his brothers. He says, especially Yudhishthira and Levi says, are all your weapons just ornaments? Could not one of you protect my son? At this point, his words are like whiplashes on the face of Yudhishthira and Bhima. They are the elder brothers, they feel especially responsible. At that time, Krishna comes over and pulls Arjuna into a side hug. And Krishna tells Arjuna, O Partha, in this world, bad things happen to everyone. Adversity befalls everyone, the wise and the unwise. What differentiates them is not the occurrence of adversity, but their response to adversity. When bad things happen, the unwise people act in ways that worsen the pain. Wise people act in ways that lessen the pain. O Partha, look at the faces of your brothers. Krishna insists, look at your faces. Arjuna looks up at Yudhishthira and Bhima with that hollow eyes. Krishna tells, they are in agony at the death of Abhimanyu just as you are. Please, O Raja, don't speak words that will increase their pain. So Krishna does not invalidate Arjuna's pain. Krishna does not tell Arjuna you are attached. Krishna does not say you are ignorant. Krishna acknowledges the pain. But then Krishna channels the pain. After that, his rage moves towards Jayadratha. He understands that in that particular situation, the Pandavas had made a strategic decision. It's a good strategy. That Abhimanyu would break the Chakravyuh and all of them will follow inside. But Jayadratha had spoiled the strategy. So next day, Arjuna fights like never before. And the Pandavas gain not just a victory in terms of killing Jayadratha, but it is morale devastating for the Kauravas. And their entire army could not stop one opposing warrior from protecting one person. How can we ever win against such an army? So it is a great victory for them the next day. But the point over here is that Krishna does not invalidate Arjuna's emotions. Krishna does not say they are Maya. So emotions, of course, we need to some extent control ourselves, but there also needs to be comforting when the emotions are there. So emotional health means that we don't have a one-sided approach where somebody's emotions are going wild and just control yourself. Why can't you control yourself? No. Everybody can get wounded by what happens. When they get wounded, they need to be comforted. Now, of course, after comforting, controlling will come. So it's not always just comforting. But comforting is a very important part of managing the mind. And that's why there is this whole limb of bhakti, guhyam akhyati puchyam. Why do we need to share our heart in confidence and hear others share their heart in confidence? Because life is difficult and our heart can get wounded at times. And at that time, we need the support of each other to be able to deal with the wounds that life causes at an emotional level. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. We're talking about emotionally healthy spirituality. And in that, I talked about the framework we're going to discuss. We talked about SAD. Today we talked about the self, tomorrow we'll talk about association and then divinity. So, in the self, I talked about three broad things. C was the concept. I didn't really follow the framework. But what is the concept? That the mind is an integral part of who we are. There is the body, mind and soul. And the mind is very important. We talked about 4 roles that the mind plays. You remember? The first is, the mind is like a route. It's the passageway. It's like a link. So it links the soul with the body. Second is, like a screen. It brings in information and integrates it for us to understand. Third is,
Memory device.
it's like a memory device. That's where the impressions, the samskaras are stored. And fourth is, it's like a mirror. The mind also affects our self-conception, our self-image. So the mind is very important tool. And the implication of this is that it's helpful to treat the mind in some ways like the body. Not exactly like the body, but it's helpful to treat it like the body. If there is an injury, then we need to treat it. And similarly, the mind can have a wound. So we discussed about our spirituality and our physical/emotional health. Both of these emotional health, there can be 3 paradigms of their interaction. Spirituality can improve, they can be unconnected. That means both need to be taken care of separately. And sometimes, if misunderstood or misapplied, our spirituality can worsen our emotional health also. So we discussed about the difference between emotions and desires over here. That are they the same? The key difference, there are many ways in which these terms can be understood, but from our perspective, emotions are more outside in. They are associated with perception. And they give necessary information to us. Emotions are information. And these are more associated with, karmendriya. They impel us to actions. So they are inside out. So desires, often they need to be controlled. Not always, but majority of the times desires need to be controlled. The emotions, there is control, but there is also comfort that is required. And that was in the takeaway. We discussed 2 main points. That when we talk about discipline, discipline can be at many different levels. The first level is, there is no perception itself. No perception and therefore no emotion. No perception, no emotion is Yada Samharate Chayam 258. Second is, that there is perception. We cannot avoid the perception, but there is no emotion. This is a stage where we have become detached enough that we don't, we have become indifferent enough that we don't feel any emotion over here. And then there might be perception, there might be emotion, but there is no intention that will lead to action. This was 217, the Bhagavad-gita. This was 510. Now, that was one takeaway, how we bring about self-discipline. But the other takeaway was that when we are wounded, when we are emotionally wounded, we also need the same 2 steps that are required when we are physically wounded. That is, we need first withdrawal. Just like we need to put our hand in a cast, we need withdrawal. That means at the time a person may just vent out their emotions. Like when Arjuna was crying, Arjuna was going through his own emotions. Krishna didn't tell him that, he was just attached. There's withdrawal and then there is re-engagement. So Arjuna managed to get his emotions together and then he was able to re-engage himself. So we discussed the example of Arjuna with after Abhimanyu's death. So for each one of us, this understanding that we all have to manage our emotions in a way that we can be functional in our lives, that is very important. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We have some time for questions if any devotee wants to.
So much about emotional healing is there in this book, Prayers Inspired by Bhagavad-gita. This is very much related to the 3rd session that we have. We talk about, does Krishna care for the things that we care for? How to open our heart and offer our heart to Krishna. There are 122 prayers inspired by various verses from the Bhagavad-gita. And there are prayers when we feel lonely, misunderstood, when we feel spiritually dry and disconnected from Krishna, when our desires seem to be growing very wild, when we feel lost in directionless in life. And much about the concept of the mind is explained in this book. There's a whole chapter on mind management, mindfulness. There's also a chapter on life determines our problems, we determine their size. How our mind can distort our perceptions. There's also a chapter on never lose hope, about how we can be resilient based on our spiritual understanding. This Gita for the CEO, it's about applying the Gita's wisdom in our daily life. So both these books are available here, and I'll be available in case if you want the books to be signed afterwards. A few questions.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. This was beautiful, really, really beautiful. With your permission, I would like to ask a couple of questions. One, Sashanti Mapnoti na Kam Kami. So, as we understand that karma is that which comes from the sense object inside the soul, isn't it? So, sense object, we see a sense object, so there is a perception of sense object, and from that sense object, the desire comes inside. Kami is when desire from inside goes to the sense object. Am I right with that person? So, when you were explaining that when there's perception, there is emotion, but there is no intention. That is the kami part, isn't it? That desires are not going from inside to outside. Is that understanding correct? Yeah.
So just to qualify, normally we don't refer to calm as outside in. Normally we refer to calm as inside out only.
But in that phrase,
in that particular phrase, the kama kami, that dual compound in there. Kama means I desire something. So generally inside out. But the metaphor is also like a river flowing into the ocean, but the ocean does not overflow. So the idea is that there is an outside in. The outside in cannot be stopped, and the outside in will also have some impact inside. But the impact is not so great that the river starts overflowing.
So the desirer of desire is the kami part, which is the intention part.
Correct, exactly.
Thank you, Prabhu. And the second question, if somebody hits me, and who experiences the pain? Is it is the soul, my mind, or my physical body?
Okay. Should we try it out? So, who experiences the pain when we are hit? So, first of all, definitely the body experiences the pain. If it's a severe injury, when the body gets, somebody the ribs are broken, the teeth falls out, whatever. So, there is an impact on the body. So, now, is the physical impact pain? Yes, we do feel pain, there's no denying that. So there's some experience in the body. There's some experience in the mind also. Now, in the broad Vedantic context, see, one of the main reasons why the idea of the soul was rejected in Western philosophy, Christianity also talks about the soul, but in Christianity, the soul is often used more in the metaphorical sense than literal sense. I won't go into that so much, but one main reason why the idea of the soul was rejected by mainstream science, and Western philosophy is that how will a spiritual soul interact with a material body? Because the idea is that in science there is the principle of causal completeness. Causal completeness is that every material phenomenon can be explained in terms of material causes. And therefore, there is no room, no reason and no room for anything non-material to play any role. And that's why the idea of the soul was rejected. Now, if we look at the broad Vedantic philosophy, exactly how the soul interacts with the body, there are many metaphors given. But the mechanism, how it happens, it's not elaborately explained. Okay? But I'll share my understanding about it. So it's not a series of verses that this is how the soul's consciousness comes to this point, then goes to this point, then goes to this point, and then comes out. There are some places where something indicative is there, but not in very elaborate specifics. So it is true that now the principle of causal completeness is not anti-spiritual. Krishna Ishopnisha itself says, Om Purnam Adha Purnamidam. This world is complete in itself. So in that sense, any event that happens, if an event happens, it can be explained in material terms. When Newton saw the apple fall, Newton believed in God. But when he wanted to know what made the apple fall, at that time he wasn't interested in God as the explanation. He wanted to know the material mechanism that made the apple fall. And that's how he came up with the idea of gravity. But his understanding was there is a bigger explanation also that's there. So this is more of a spiritual explanation and there is a material explanation. So both can coexist. What do I mean by this? So if we have a billiards game being played and we have camera right on the billiards board, top. So if we see the ball is going into the hole. Now we could explain it all in terms of the laws of physics. It's a little complicated. We'll have fluid mechanics and all that. This ball hit this ball with this angle, with this velocity, and this was the momentum that was created. That ball hit that ball hit that ball, and it went into the hole. And that's a proper explanation. It's a correct explanation. Isn't the complete explanation. If we zoom the camera out, we might see that there is a champion billiards player over there. And that player is holding a stick. So now, that billiards player may not be conscious, most likely not conscious of the laws of fluid mechanics. Is skilled enough and plays the ball. So there are two distinct explanations and both coexist. So why am I talking about this here? That within the Vedantic school of thought, there are Vedantic schools of thought, there are two ways of looking at it. That the soul does nothing. One way of looking at it, soul does nothing and the soul experiences nothing. The soul is simply providing consciousness to the body. And it is, the experience is there because the consciousness is there. And the soul doesn't experience anything. So in 13.33-34 there are two metaphors. With that Adityatam Tejo, no, not the other one. What is the verse? I think it comes in no. Yata sarvagatam saukshman akasham nopalipyate sarvatra dehe tathatma nopalipyate. So that two metaphors again, one like the ether, or the space is present everywhere but space is not affected, and then the next metaphor is that the sun is present in one place but then it illuminates the entire universe. Now the sun is not affected by the changes on the earth. That's one metaphor. So the sun causes the changes on the earth, but the sun is not affected by it. So that means, in that metaphor, the soul does not experience anything at all. The soul is at a distinct place, and because the consciousness of the soul is present in the body and mind experience something, the soul is unaffected. Now the other metaphor is given is of a dream. Now when we are dreaming something, are we experiencing something?
Yes.
So yes. A child may be having a nightmare at that time. Is the child terrorized? Yes. Because practically the child is safe. The child is in bed, the mother is in the next room, or the mother may be in the same room. But the child isn't terrorized. So, now, wherever our consciousness is, that is where our experience is. So are we the soul or are we the consciousness? Well, you can say we are the soul, but we don't experience the soul. What we experience is the consciousness. That's why wherever our consciousness is, that is where we experience emotions. And that's why practically, philosophically speaking, you may say the soul experiences nothing. But practically speaking, it's that where the soul's consciousness is, that's where all its experiences. In that sense, we can say it is we who are experiencing it. And we are not completely disconnected from the soul. We are the souls. So, one way of looking at it is all the suffering of this world is Maya. You just have to become detached and you will experience no suffering. But it's not that simple. If all the suffering were Maya, then why does the Shastra say this world is Dukkhalaya and get out of this world? You just say the Dukkha is also Maya. Isn't it? So, but the Dukkha is real. And we experience the Dukkha. So, that way, the healthy approach is to recognize that while our consciousness is caught in something, we do experience strong emotions. And those emotions are real at that particular time. So the soul is experiencing, so the body is experiencing it, the mind is experiencing it, and the soul may not be experiencing it, but the soul's energies manifest in the consciousness, and it's through the consciousness that we experience everything. That's why we do experience pain.
So when the Bhagavatam says that the soul, I'll tell you the reason for the confusion, Prabhuji. The Bhagavatam, the verse is 1.7.5, wherein the Bhagavatam says, Yayasam mohito jiva atmanam trigunatmakam paro api manute anartham tathapi chavipatyate. So he says that, because of being affected by the external energy, the living being, although transcendental to the three modes, considers himself or herself to be the product of matter, and because of that, experiences the miseries of the pain. That is the reason why the confusion.
Yeah, because of the experiences. But this was the one I was talking about. If you go to your words also, that what it says is, in that same series of verses, a few verses later it comes that this is 1.7.5.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now, if you see the same series, 3 verses later, Yasyam Vaishnuyamanaya Shoka Moha Bhaya, that it is talking that while we are in the material world, we experience Shoka Moha Bhaya. And by hearing about Krishna, that Shoka Moha Bhaya will go off. So in that sense, the Bhagavatam is not minimizing the suffering. So going back to the starting question, the reason I told about this is that I talked about causal completeness and all that, that is very technical. But one of the metaphors which I have seen many devotee scientists are now presenting to explain the link between the soul and the body. That is virtual reality. See, in virtual reality, if somebody is playing a video game, now the whole mechanism of the video game is a software. And within the software, it's causally complete. Now, you don't really need to set up the mechanism, you don't have to do anything. Just press a button here, pull a button there. And nowadays, there are video games even for people who are physically handicapped. So it can just plug into your brain. And based on the sensations in your brain, they can detect and they can also, that's how Stephen Hawking would speak his voice and something like that. So we don't even really have to do anything physical. So virtual reality gives a good model where something in the virtual world is all going on according to its own mechanism. And that mechanism is complete itself, but still there is an agent outside which is causing it. So now if Sadaput Prabhu gives the example of this, Sadaput, the devotee scientist, he says that if a person is playing like a car racing game, and the car is going by, and then they're going on the bridge, and the bridge just breaks. Somebody shoots the bridge, and the bridge breaks, and the person falls, and the car explodes below on the ground. So then, does the person die? Well, it's a virtual death. The person is not dead actually. But depending on how much that person is invested in that particular whole video game, that person will experience that much shock. And that shock for that person is real at that particular time. So, it is. So this particular idea, I think the key difference between the Christian theology and the Vedic theology is, in the Christian theology there is no concept of the mind. So the mind and the subtle body as different from the soul, that is not there, and that's why in Christian theology there is no mechanism to explain how the soul interacts with the body. But in the Vedic theology, now I'm not saying it's like a cut and dry explanation, which is not it has to be much more developed in the language of science. But that mechanism of the subtle body is a potential for explaining how something spiritual can interact with something material.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think we are running over time.
Hare Krishna, yes. Thank you so much.
So two things. Sorry, if any of you have any questions, maybe you can note them down. And because this is quite a practical topic, I have a plan of how I want to take the sessions. But today I have explained most of the concepts. And if you have any questions, we will give adequate time for questions tomorrow. And if there are a lot of important questions, ideally, is there some way they can in a WhatsApp group or somewhere they can?
Oh yes. If you have questions, you can.
They can send it to me. Then depend on
WhatsApp in our group, and then we'll pass it on to Prabhuji.
Then we can
get the answer tomorrow, if in case you have, because we have extended the time today.
So we can have a question directed session if required. I'll speak in 15-20 minutes, and then we'll go towards questions.
Or the other thing that we can do is on the last day we can allocate a special session, say 20 minutes or half an hour for questions. So thanks.
Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you.
And I pray that Krishna give us all the strength to become emotionally recovered and healthy as we make this journey towards Him in this material world. Thank you very much. Krishna Bhagwan ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki Jai. Jai Gaur Premanand.